Hello, everyone. This is Nick Katko from BMA, and welcome to November's Lean Accounting webinar, Creating a Continuous Improvement System for Accounting. Before we get started, I wanted to do the standard technical check. I want to know if you can hear me, if you can see me, and if you can see my presentation. And in the question pane, if you can just type in yes. All right, thank you, Galina. Okay, great. I started a few seconds early, so I'm just going to give a few people a few more minutes before we actually get started with the webinar, the material. And what I'll do is I want to go over the sort of the administrative aspects, mainly for you. If you would like a copy of this presentation, it's in the handout section of your control panel, and you can download it. If you forget to do that, or if you're watching a recording of the webinar, please send me an email, and I'll be glad to send you a copy of this presentation. Also, you can ask questions in the question pane. I will look at those questions during the attendance check parts of the webinar, and then if we have time at the end. And of course, if you're watching this webinar on a recording, you have a question, please feel free to email me. If you are a certified public accountant and you would like 1 hour of continuing education credit for watching the live presentation of the webinar, answer the 3 polling questions, stay logged in, and then send me an email and I'll get a CPE certificate to you. If you are not a CPA and you'd still like a certificate of attendance, I'd also be glad to send that to you. In terms of the learning objectives and the general agenda of this webinar, it's one of my goals in this webinar is for you to understand how lean thinking is a problem-solving system based on plan, do, check, adjust, and it is the foundation of continuous improvement in accounting. I want you to be able to understand the purpose, the practices and tools of a daily lean management system and how it's helpful in accounting. At the end of this webinar, you should be able to understand the practices and tools of continuous improvement events, and finally be able to explain the importance of lean performance measurements in accounting. Okay, let's get started with the lean system for accounting. Now, there's lots of good books on lean. There's lots of good people who talk about it and explain it. And I'm not here to try to reinvent things, but what's important for accounting to understand is that lean is a system. And the principles, practices, and tools of lean are applicable in all accounting processes and form the foundation for a continuous improvement system. But one thing I've learned over the years is that the starting point for a company or a value stream or an administrative process, the starting point and how you sort of conduct the lean accounting transformation can be a little bit different depending on what you're working on. And so really what I wanted to do here is spend a few minutes sort of outlining the lean system and how it applies specifically to accounting. Lean can be, understanding lean can be overwhelming. And so I'm going to break it down into 4 integrated subsystems, and think of this as a framework, okay? The first system is a daily lean management system. So these are practices to control processes and troubleshoot problems as they occur. The goal of daily lean management in any process is to provide stability and control. And really, the goal in daily lean management is to serve customers today. And I'm going to talk a lot about serving customers today. Accounting does have customers. You have many customers, in fact. And some are internal, some are external. But every accounting process serves customers, and that's important to start thinking about in the aspect of creating a continuous improvement system. Then there is the actual continuous improvement system, which are practices to identify and eliminate waste in a methodical manner, okay? And it's not about just random improvements. It's not about what you read in professional accounting journals. It's not about the latest and greatest thing to do in accounting. It's about studying the process and methodically eliminating the waste. Then there's the management system. PDCA stands for plan, do, check, and adjust. Some say it's plan, do, check, act. Same thing. PDCA is the scientific method as applied to businesses, and it forms the foundation for all of the continuous improvement activities and daily lean management activities. Another part of the management system is lean performance measurements. What I like to tell accounting about lean is that lean is really about moving numbers. It's making sure you have the right numbers. And we'll look at lean performance measurements a little while. And the other piece of a lean system for accounting is huddles and visual boards. There's also a planning system, practices to identify strategic improvement initiatives over time. Today, what we're going to focus on is daily lean management, continuous improvement, and the management systems behind each. So what are the goals of improving accounting processes? A lean system generally has 3 goals: serve customers better, improve process performance, and respect for people. So to serve customers better, you want to improve delivery. What does that mean in accounting? It is the improving the delivery of what comes out of the transaction processing, delivery of information, and delivery of services. Quality. Reduce defects and build a quality system. Accounting has to deal with poor quality all the time, and they're very good at fixing the problems. But where you have to progress is how do we reduce them, and how do we prevent them? Lead time, how long it takes to fill an order, okay? This includes accounts payable and accounts receivable. We want to reduce the processing time, okay? And related to that is information flow, Okay, how do we eliminate waste and flow to improve the flow of work so that everything is faster? That improves process performance. So lead time and information flow are almost the same thing. Then there's productivity. How do we increase the output with the same resources? If you eliminate waste, you create more time, and that you can apply that time to serving customers better. You're more productive. How do we reduce costs over time? Respect for people, safety and morale. Now, you think of safety more in manufacturing, but there's emotional safety, safe environments, there's physically safe environments. Physical issues in accounting could be eye strain, could be repetitive motion problems. So all these things are applicable, especially if you're sitting at a computer all the time, just using your hands. And morale is, how do we reduce the overburden on people? Accounting teams work hard. And a lot of times there's overtime, coming in early, staying in late. How do we reduce that overburden of work? And how do we develop people? So these goals will be measured. We'll talk about that. And it's important for everybody in accounting to understand what the goals are. Why do we want to improve? Serve customers better, improve process performance, and respect for people. Mentioned PDCA before. This is the lean problem solving process. It is a disciplined approach to solving problems. It's a way to think. It is actually the structure of improvement events. And the 4 steps: plan, do, check, adjust. The plan step, you define and measure a problem or an opportunity. And I can't stress enough, you have to measure the problem. It's not sitting around, what do I think the problem is? Now, you may have awareness of a problem, but there's a difference between awareness of a problem and measuring it. So you have to measure the problem. That's like the current state. In the plan, you also have to decide, how much do we need to improve? Okay, and that again needs to be measured. You want to perform a root cause analysis. What's causing the problem? Then from there, develop a plan to address one or more of the root causes. The do step, you execute the plan. The check step, you have a current state, you have a target, and after you execute the plan, how did you do compared to where you are in the target? And then the adjust is, okay, we made some improvement. How do we sustain that with standard work? Now, maybe we didn't make the kind of improvement that we thought, or we didn't solve the problem. So what do we do next? Do we run another PDCA cycle? Do we adjust the action plan and try again? Or do we run another event? Here's the key. And I'll mention this a few times. Lean in accounting is about moving numbers. So for example, if you were looking at poor quality in accounts payable, you'd want to measure. And I'm going to use an example of a company that I work with. Is I told them to measure defects in accounts payable for a month. And they came back, and I think it was like, between 40 and 45% of the invoices that came in had a defect. So now we measured the problem. Then they went a little bit further, and they broke down the defects by probable root cause. For example, no approval, no purchase order, things like that. And then what we did is we set a target of reducing those defects by 50% in 2 months. They put some different action plans in place, ran them, and then they ended up actually exceeding that goal of a 50% reduction. But, PDCA is about thinking, it's about practice, but you have to have measures. Now, continuous improvement is about solving problems, but not all problems are created equal. And there's a good book called, I'm looking at it here, it's 4 Types of Problems by Art Smalley. And it's really good because it's not highly technical, but it gives people an idea that all problems are not created equal. So one type of problem is troubleshooting. This is how do we respond during our workday to abnormal conditions? What's the response when something goes wrong as we're working? There's another type of problem where there is no standard of process performance. Okay. Then there's the problem of having a standard of process performance, but there is a gap where the actual performance did not meet the standard. Then there's target condition or future state. This is about how do we improve a standard to improve performance. And troubleshooting and gap from standard, there you have to react to the problems. Okay. Target condition. This is proactive improvement. When people think about continuous improvement, that's what they think about. Oh, we're going to do a continuous improvement event. But, a true continuous improvement system is trying to solve these problems. And what's interesting is that many accounting processes have elements of all of these problems. Okay, no standard. This is the idea of tribal knowledge, where people just do the work, but the standards haven't been documented. And, there might be slight variations in how people do work, okay, if it's sort of like all in everybody's heads. So the idea is, not is to identify the problem because the response to the problem is different. In terms of lean performance measurements, I just want to give you a quick summary here. We're going to look at them coming up in more detail. You really have 2 sets of measures. You have process measures and improvement measures. Process measures are typically measured daily. It's about setting, measuring performance standards. Okay, so it's they're discrete. Every day is a new day, and we measure every day. The idea of process measures is to understand gaps from standard and understand troubleshooting issues. You typically use the daily process measures in a daily huddle, and they lead to countermeasures and more of the simple improvement events. They can also give you trends of recurring problems that you may require a continuous improvement event. And typically you have like 3 to 5, maybe 3 to 6 measures. Your improvement measures are continuous. You're trying to improve them over time. So you look at them on a weekly and or monthly basis. And as I said about target conditions, one thing that one thing you're trying to do is create a problem to solve when you're trying to improve. And again, you have about 5 to 7 measures, which we're going to look at here in a few minutes. But first, we have attendance check number 1. So I'm going to open up the poll and launch it. And I'll take a look, see if there's any questions. I don't see any questions, thanks. All right, I'm going to close out the poll. And we're going to move on to the daily lean management system. As I mentioned earlier, the starting point for a lean transformation is different depending on the type of company you are, the process you're looking at, or the value stream you're looking at. And one thing that I've done over the years when I'm working with accounting teams is I begin with daily lean management, okay? Because the nature of the work in accounting, it's information processing. Everybody's working on a computer, okay? It's not like you're building a product in a physical space. And there's generally an awareness of problems, but having the facts, such as the frequency of the problem or understanding the root causes. So that's why daily lean management, I call it a lean classroom, because you're doing something every day and you're learning about problems and issues. And you also learn the plan, do, check, adjust process, which it sort of serves as a training ground to do continuous improvement events. So a daily lean management system is based on PDCA. And like I said, I'm going to be talking a lot about PDCA. So the first step is the plan step. So what is the work plan? What work needs to be completed today? And really what you're doing there is you are setting the standard for the day. Now you plan the work to only 80% of capacity. And the reason you don't plan the work to 100% of capacity is because you need to have a buffer for things that go wrong, for troubleshooting, for meetings, and other types of interruptions. And I'm going to give you the general plan steps in a few minutes. The do, how do you execute the work using standard work? Now, accounting processes are quite routine, but standard work is a little bit different. It's not what you think, and I'm going to explain that in more detail in a few minutes. The other thing is, how do we respond as problems occur? This is the whole thing about troubleshooting. The check and adjust is about holding a daily huddle, reviewing the measurements, understanding gaps from standard, understanding the difference between trends and noise, and then how are we going to respond to gaps from standard? What countermeasures are we going to take, or maybe what improvements do we have to make? So it's the process. And following PDCA every day teaches people how to think the PDCA process and how to be part of it. You need to have performance measurements in place. And if you think about the goals of lean, which we talked about earlier, improving delivery. So what is a recommended measure? Schedule attainment. Okay, you set a plan every day. So there's your schedule of work. Measure how much work was completed to the planned work. Quality, defects, defect rate or first time through rate. So measure the number of defective items divided by the total items produced or processed during the day. Lead time, the goal of reducing lead time is really about meeting schedule attainment every day. Same thing is true for information flow and productivity. So schedule attainment is a very important measure in daily lean management for accounting. In terms of measuring cost, you want to look at the drivers of cost on a daily basis. Overtime hours. There might be some things like prompt payment discounts lost. Then safety. You can have something called a safety cross. Just did we have any incidents today? Yes or no? And if we did, why? And then morale, respect for people. Problem solved per person, but that's not really something that goes on necessarily daily. But you can have just how do you feel about today? Thumbs up, thumbs down. Thumbs up, good. Thumbs down, why? So really, in daily lean management for any accounting process, schedule attainment and defects, I think, are the two most important measures. And then cost drivers and safety and morale. So here again, 3 to 5 measures is all you need for any accounting process. So planning the work. In the PDCA process, plan is always the most important step, no matter how you're using it. So demand, okay? What work needs to get done? So what are the value-added activities to meet customer demand for the day? So if you think about accounts payable, or you think about accounts receivable, what work has to get done? And not all of that work is known though, but a lot of it is, okay? And that's where the buffer comes in. You have to define a unit of work or a batch size. So this can be specific tasks, or it can be what happens over a specific time frame. You're trying to create a routine and a cadence. Capacity, as I mentioned, you use 80% of available daily capacity. 20% is a buffer for the unexpected, for interruptions, okay? And by the way, if those interruptions don't occur, you can always pull more work in. So you balance the demand to 80% of capacity, all of the other demand goes into the backlog, and if there is available capacity during the day, it gets pulled in. So here's a very simple example in accounts payable. We have 3 employees, Zeta, Noah, and Asa. In a typical 8-hour day, 80% of an 8-hour day is, 6.4 hours. So let's just round it down to 6 hours. That's your available capacity to plan work against. So the value-added work that has to be done today, well, there's an estimate that raw material invoices are going to take about 7 hours. Other invoices are going to take 6 hours. Expense reports, 5 hours. So there's 18 hours of work. There's also non-value added work, resolving invoice discrepancy. So we have 21 hours of demand. We only have 18 hours of available capacity. So how do we plan it out? Well, Zeta is best at raw material invoices. So we assign those raw material invoices to her, 6 hours worth, 1 hour goes into the backlog. Noah is best at employee expense reports. So he's going to do those. ASA is really good at the invoice discrepancy issues. Then the other invoices can be split among people. So Noah gets 1 hour's worth of that work. ASA gets the other 3 hours of that work. And you see we have a backlog. There's 1 hour worth of raw material invoices and 2 hours of other invoices that have to be processed. But that's as simple as it has to be in terms of scheduling the work. So standard work. Accounting has policies and procedures. Accounting has internal controls they have to follow. So don't confuse policies and procedures or internal controls with standard work. Standard work is the best known way to effectively and efficiently perform an activity in a repeatable manner. Standard work is like the opposite of tribal knowledge. Standard work is documented, simple and visual. We're not talking about a policy and procedure manual that's like in a notebook that you pull out. I'm going to show you an example. This is something that's at the workstation that's simple and visual. What are the elements of standard work? What do we have to do? How do we do it? Why do we do it? When do we do it? And how long should it take? And the idea of standard work is to identify non-standard conditions. So here's a simple example of standard work. Again, this is a company I work with, and what they were doing was they were putting more people into this is order entry. Okay, how do we enter an order? And a lot of their customers have special ordering requirements or special shipping requirements. And so, they simply took Excel, they listed for GA Smith orders, what are the steps? And a lot of this has to do with, UPS. And then they just take a screenshot of what the screen looks like in terms of entering the information. That's standard work. And it can be sitting there at anybody's desk. The idea behind standard work is that you could train someone on standard work and they can follow it if they've never done the work before. I've mentioned troubleshooting problems, non-standard conditions. This is where daily lean management is essential in terms of having a structure and a routine. So what are the typical daily troubleshooting problems that may occur? Number one is changes in demand. Okay. You might have unplanned demand that changes the priority of work. How is this going to be managed? Who is going to change the priority of work? There has to be a standard to respond to the non-standard condition. There's the variability of processing times. This is something that is unique in accounting. For example, not all supplier invoices take the same amount of time to process. I might get an invoice with one item. It takes me seconds to process it. I might get another invoice that has many line items and it might take a lot longer. Okay, so we don't know how long it's going to take till we open up the work. So what happens, for example, if I am working on something that's taking a long time? okay? Because there's other work to do. So how would I signal somebody else, can you pick up some of this work? Then there's unexpected changes in capacity. Somebody goes home because they're ill. And this is probably going to be very familiar to most people in business. You know, especially in administrative processes or in managerial positions, you get pulled into some meeting that was not planned. So if I'm in accounts payable and I get pulled into a meeting, the capacity goes down. Now, this is what the buffer capacity is designed to be used for, that 20%. But you know what it's like sometimes, you know, the whole day goes haywire. So again, how are we going to respond? And when we encounter waste, what do we do? So for example, if I encounter a defect in accounts payable, an invoice is defective, there's some missing or incorrect information, what do I do? Do I solve it right now? Do I put it aside and work on it later? Or do I give it to someone else to work on? There needs to be a standard response. You know, you want to control the flow of work visually. And this is a simple example. It's a small accounts payable function. So they set up bins of 2 hours of work, and they basically load the invoices in. So, you know, you see each person has 2 hours of work assigned to them. Then the backlog of the backlog is on the bottom. And you also have noticed that Sue doesn't have anything scheduled from 2:30 to 4:30. That is the idea of the buffer capacity. So again, you try to make the work visual in terms of controlling it. You want to create a visual performance board for daily lean management. I've always say that it's very important to follow the PDCA process in designing the board. What's the demand? What's the backlog? What's the status during the day? What are the measures? What are the problems? The daily huddle agenda, you know, is really about understanding what happened today. So what was our target condition, our standard of performance? 5 questions to really answer. What's the current condition? Why is the current condition not meeting standards, or why is it above standards? What are we going to do next? How are we going to respond to either improve or contain? And whatever our response is, how are we going to see it? How are we going to know whether the problem is resolved? That's basically your agenda for a daily huddle. So to wrap up daily lean management, the steps to build it. Build a model line. So pick one process and fully implement daily lean management and get it working. It's easier for people to understand what it is when they see it, rather than trying to do like the whole accounting department at the same time. The method I like to use is build the board. So if you're building the board and you're saying, you know, we have a plan step, what's going to be the demand? How are we going to show it? Then how are we going to show the status? Then you're building sort of the rules of daily lean management. Think of daily lean management as a lean learning system. You're learning, the people are learning PDCA. They're learning how to identify problems. I can't stress enough having an experienced coach to facilitate implementing daily lean management. You really need someone who can, it's like a teacher, you know, you have to teach them how to run this. Typically within 30 days, people get the hang of it and then they can run it themselves. And make sure you focus on building quality into daily lean management. So let's now do attendance check number 2. All right, there's no questions. So while you're answering, I just wanted to say that, daily lean management will also help identify recurring problems and issues and then you need to have a continuous improvement event to resolve them. Make sure that everything is factual and objective. That's what measures do. I'm going to close the poll. I'm not going to share the results. So let's talk about continuous improvement. People solve problems. The reason I say that is there's a lot of writing in the lean accounting profession about automation and artificial intelligence. And, there's merits to some of that. I'm not against it, but people solve problems. People eliminate waste. Automation, artificial intelligence doesn't. So my word of caution is don't jump to an automated solution until you have eliminated most of the waste, because then you're just going to automate the waste. So the PDCA process is the foundation for continuous improvement, a continuous improvement event. So you have to define and measure the problem, the current state. You have to set an improvement target, identify root causes, and plan the event. When you conduct the event, you want to follow the PDCA process also. Then when the event's over, study, confirm the results. And then you know how much improvement you've made. How do we sustain that improvement? If we want to make further improvement, how do we conduct another event? And the actual event also follows the PDCA process. It's important not to skip steps. It's important to follow the process and document the process, even if a solution is apparent, because that would develop the habits of people jumping to solutions. Okay, I work with a company and there's in procure to pay process, the team made some good improvements, but they sort of just basically did things without documenting everything. So the practices and tools of a continuous improvement system. Number 1 is lean performance measurements. We talked about improvement measures. I'll show you some in a second. Map the process, make the process visual. Document the process on A3 forms. Conduct a level of a weekly huddle to understand the progress of improvements. And if you conduct an improvement event, follow the PDCA process. So let's look at these in detail. Basic improvement measures. Measuring on-time delivery. What's the average on-time percentage to customer request date? Measuring quality. We talked about defect rates. Same measure is applicable here, but it's over time. What's the average defect rate? What's the average process lead time? Okay, is it shrinking? How long, for example, how long does it take to process an invoice in accounts payable? For month-end close, how many man hours or person hours does it take? Not how many days, how many hours does it take to close the books? Information flow, same thing, average process lead time. Productivity, what's the value added output over the hours worked? How many invoices per hour are in accounts payable? Cost as a percentage of sales is the improvement measure for cost, because most costs are fixed. And then safety and average incident rate, respect for people, improvement event participation rate, or cross training. So these are just basic improvement measures that you need to consider in any accounting process. Make the process visual. Okay, there's different ways to do it. This is an example. Typically what I use Post-it notes. Okay, and the process steps are listed above. You can use tools like Visio. You can use Excel. You can use a SIPOC chart. You can use a swim lane diagram. It doesn't matter what you use. Make the process visible. You want to understand the proper sequence of the events, in what order. Now, in this example, you see the known waste. Typically what I do after the process is up, I have a little exercise where I give people Post-it notes and I say, what are the problems and issues? And I just give them a chance to put it on the board. The A3 form is an important tool. It documents the process, the PDCA process, for one continuous improvement event. So you have to have a problem statement. What's a good problem statement? What is happening? What should happen? What should happen? What's the gap? Quantify the problem with lean performance measurements. Make the process visual. You have to understand the extent of the problem and exactly where does the problem occur in the process. Then the future state is a derivative of the current state. How much do we need to improve? What's the expected time frame to achieve the target? And what are some other benefits? You do the root cause analysis in a rational way, and you come up with solutions. Okay, some solutions may be apparent, some solutions may be experimental in nature, but the first five boxes of an A3 plan, the plan step. Then you conduct the rapid experiments. Okay, you test solutions, or if the solution is obvious, put it in place. All the while you are measuring the impact of the solution. Then you check, compare what you put in place to what the future state was, and then how do we sustain? And always, what else have we learned from the improvements? So the A3, it's a form that follows the PDCA process, and it really documents an improvement event. And it makes people follow the process. So if you're going to do improvement events, you need to require an A3 form to be completed. You also want to have a visual representation of improvement. And again, you can set it up as PDCA. So, in this example, you have a current state map and a future state map and a list of all the improvement events. The D row, those are the continuous improvement projects. And those really A3s that are on there. The check, those are the performance measurements. The adjust, Pareto charts. So again, design the board to be able to understand the status of all improvement events. the check and adjust. Okay, this is the idea of a continuous improvement huddle. So you're checking performance. Okay, how has performance changed since we last met? That's what your lean process improvement measures tell you. What progress has been made in terms of the improvement events? How has this impacted performance? You're studying the overall impact of improvements. You're comparing the current measure to some target. And so what are the root causes of why it is at actual compared to the target? What adjustments do we need to make to our improvement plan? And what is the continuous improvement plan for the next interval until we meet again? Do you have to meet weekly? Not necessarily. It depends really on the level of improvement going on and the size of the accounting function in your company. Monthly is good, but you want improvement measures in place. You want the improvement measures to drive what you need to work on. And finally, how do you prioritize improvement events? So you want to look at the impact of an improvement event. Is it high? What you think, is it high or is it low? And you want to look at the effort, low, high. And you sort of use this, the improvement events that you feel have the highest impact with the lowest effort, get those done first. The low effort, low impact, make those the next priority. High effort, low impact, lowest priority. And high effort, high impact, save those for later. The idea is to solve problems, and it's really, you don't have to be a hero and solve the biggest problem first. Solve a lot of little problems. That creates capacity to become more productive and solve the more complex problems. So let's do attendance check number 3. And this question's a little different, okay? So I'm just taking a quick poll, in terms of 2024 webinar topics that I can do, which interests you? And you could answer more than one. And I'll check to see if there's any questions. There are no questions. I'll give you 5 more seconds to complete and close poll. I'm going to share the results. So, nice mix. So I got all next year to do these webinars, and I'll save these results. Okay, let's wrap up. Next webinar, December 19th, 2023. It was originally scheduled for earlier in December, but I had to reschedule it because of work commitments. So if you've already registered for it, note the new date and time. Lean is about moving numbers, okay? And numbers drive thinking. And accounting people are good at numbers. Accounting people that's what we do, okay? So make lean about numbers. So what are the challenges you face in lean accounting process improvement? Number one is the nature of accounting's work. there's the transactional work, but there's also service. And what I mean by that is, you have to talk to suppliers, you have to talk to customers, you have to talk to your internal customers. So that you got the transactions, but you got the service. And the one thing about creating value in service is that it is at the point of interaction that value is created. So, when the supplier calls accounts payable, the idea is to try to solve whatever that problem is as fast as possible. Sometimes it's difficult for accountants to see the difference between value and waste, okay? Because we fix problems, okay? But a lot of those problems that we have to fix are waste. It becomes part of our work. There's little visibility naturally in accounting's work on the status, how the processes work, and the waste because, it's all sort of done through software systems and computers. So you got to make everything visible. Accounting works on deadlines, okay? The weekly check run, get, month-end close. Because of the deadlines, we have a tendency to be firefighters because we got to get the work, we got to get these things fixed to meet the deadlines. Accountants may work in more than one accounting process, especially in a smaller company. I might do accounts receivable and accounts payable. Okay. Accounting processes depend on cross-functional company processes. So accounts payable is part of procure to pay. Accounts receivable is part of order to cash. Month end, everything flows into month end. And we mentioned variability in work activities, demand, and processing times. So these are challenges you need to be aware of. So building a lean system for accounting, start with daily lean management. Build a model line, teach people PDCA through daily lean management. Identify opportunities for improvement using the measures, map the process, collect the data that you need. Don't just jump into what event I think we need to do or we think we need to work on. Learn how to conduct continuous improvement events by focusing on simple problems and follow the PDCA process. I talked about don't automate waste. PDCA is a way to think, it's a way to conduct events. Don't skip the steps. And make sure you have coaching, okay? It's best to have that teacher be able to teach people the way you think, okay? General roadmap, create visibility. Improve inside accounting, okay? If the root cause of a problem is inside accounting, focus on that first. Sort of tidy up your house. Eventually, you're going to have to focus cross-functionally on procure to pay and order to cash, okay? That's based on what's the root cause of the waste, okay? But make sure that you take care of your house first. You don't want to just start, it's not about pointing fingers. It's about bringing upstream functions into the improvement process. And then there's working with customers and suppliers. So it's where's the root cause? How do we need to deal with the root cause? So that wraps things up. And I just wanted to let you know about the lean accounting certification courses, which are now available. There's lean management accounting, and there's also lean accounting process improvement. And the lean accounting process improvement is really what you learn today at a very high level. So again, if you're interested, you can go to the BMA website and register. You have any questions about any of these certification courses, please feel free to contact me. So that wraps things up for today. And I just want to see if there's any questions. So Horace asked, is percentage complete a good measure of defects? Yes, it could be in a longer process. And that's really it for questions. Brian, you wanted a copy of the presentation. Could you send me an email and I'll get it to you? So that wraps things up. If you have any further questions, let me know. And for all of you in the US, I hope you have a happy Thanksgiving. And I'll see you in a few weeks for our final webinar in 2023. So everyone, please have a good day.